day of pretrial hearings in the case against Delphi double murder suspect Richard Allen. Day 2 involved what prosecutors hope is some of the most damaging testimony yet. And CBS 4's Kit Hanley is in Delphi with what we learned in the courtroom Wednesday and what we can expect today.
During yesterday's hearing, Allen's defense team took their best shot to try to get key evidence thrown out. Allen's own words. Richard Allen, the man accused of killing both Abby Williams and Libby German back in 2017, has confessed to these killings dozens of times to his family, to prison guards, and a prison psychologist.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay, how is everybody? Going to talk a little bit today about the Delphi murders and Richard Allen's hearing, which is still going on. Today was the end of a 3-day hearing in his case. And the defense is throwing basically everything at the prosecution to get out the 61. That's right, you heard me. For those in the back, 61 confessions he's made since being in prison. And he is in prison. They're trying to move him to jail. And the state doesn't seem to be... The jail doesn't seem to be opposed to that. I'm not sure about the state. But he was put in there because he was put there on watch because they thought he might end it all. And during his time, he confessed, as you heard in the opening, to prison guards, to fellow inmates, and to a prison psychologist, also to his wife on the phone and to his mother on the phone. And the prison psychologist is really helping him out. Now, I haven't covered this case before. I found this story particularly interesting because of the element of the prison psychologist who's come in. We'll talk about her. To my eye, seems to be a very dangerous personality and seems to be doing everything she can to aid Richard Allen in his defense. Now, if you've been following this case, and I've kept an eye on it, I haven't covered it, but I have kept an eye on it, you'll know that when this story broke in 2017, it really spread like wildfire through the true crime community. Everybody was trying to solve it, and no one, not one person, people went to Man in High Bridge themselves in Indiana to check out the scene and investigate, really put a lot of effort into solving this case as armchair detectives. And no one came up with the name Richard Allen. So it was a big shock to everyone when he was charged in 2022 with this crime. So there are a lot of people who think that the state has the wrong person. And the defense has a wild theory involving ritual murders and satanic cult murders, and with little evidence. Though I know the one person I think that they've pointed out who may be a part of this kind of group has an ironclad alibi, so that's a problem. So the state is trying to get any mention of any other kind of suspect out of the defense's case. I doubt that would be wholly successful, maybe partially. But more interestingly, more interesting in this case is this psychologist. Let me show you who I'm talking about here, and we'll get into it. We'll get into the kind of deeper news story about it. This is psychologist Dr. Monica Walla. So there she is. And she admits that she herself is, not to spoiler alert, a true crime fan and followed this case. So I think that it's a troublesome thing when you have a figure like this who's not just treating an accused murderer, but is also a fan in some ways of the case, or a follower of the case. Maybe that's a softer way to put it. But I'm going to start out showing this news story, then we're going to get a little deeper into these issues with Dr. Monica Walla.
Accused of killing 2 Delphi teenagers, confessed to the murders several times.
That testimony highlights another important day of hearings in this.
Several times. I mean, is that the underestimation of the universe? 61 times. And so they're saying he's out of his mind. He was out of his mind, and he was doing all these odd things at the time. You'll hear. But 61 times, 61. And the defense is trying to say this is a false confession. So I've mentioned this before, but there used to be an idea of a false confession, meaning singular, meaning one that was given under duress. There's lots of risk factors. So he was given under duress, you were threatened with bodily harm, or you were actually beat up. You had a low IQ, I believe being of a lower class is even a risk factor. But now the defense attorneys and the wrongful conviction movement, and what I would call the pro-criminal movement, has gotten so bold that they have a new thing, which is like false confessions, so that someone could falsely confess under no of those conditions multiple times, and that many people in the same crime could falsely confess that are all consistent. All their confessions are consistent with one another. And you really have to be just, I guess, born yesterday to believe it, but they're running with it in this case.
This Delphi case. The hearing continues right now, may in fact even continue into the evening.
Yeah, our senior investigative reporter Bob Siegel has been in court, but he stepped out to share some more on the incriminating statements that we're learning about today.
Will a jury be able to hear about the alleged confessions from Richard Allen? That is the focus of a hearing today here at the Carroll County Courthouse. The state says prison guards and inmates at the Westville Correctional Facility heard Allen confess to the killings of Abby Williams and Libby German, and that the defendant also confessed during recorded phone calls with his wife. In court testimony today, the former warden at the Westville Correctional Facility said that Richard Allen confessed directly to him that he committed the murders while the warden was checking on him as he was walking around Allen's cell block.
Yeah, he was just walking around the cell block, the warden, And Richard Allen just confessed to him. He wasn't asking him anything about his crime. This guy could not stop confessing. This might be a record number of confessions for any accused murderer ever.
An investigator at the prison said today during testimony that her staff logged 2 other confessions from Richard Allen. But a prison psychologist who met regularly with Allen testified that Richard Allen's mental health was extremely poor, critical, and deteriorating, and that he suffered from stress-induced psychosis around the time that Allen made his confessions. She said there was no doubt he had serious mental illness around that time. So the defense team says Allen's confessions were coerced. They are asking the judge to suppress the statements, meaning a jury would not hear them during his murder trial. The judge has not yet decided whether to admit the confessions or not, but that decision will be incredibly important for both sides. Richard Allen listened closely during all of today's testimony, at one point turning around and telling his wife and mother, "I love you guys." He'll be back in court again tomorrow.
And the crazy thing about that, did you guys just hear what he told his mother and his supporters in the courtroom? "I love you guys." Does anyone remember? This was the video that was taken at the scene of the crime. So famous. Right, guys down the hill. So interesting turn of phrase there. "I love you guys." But okay.
Tomorrow for one more day of hearings. This time it is the prosecutor asking the judge for the ability to keep information out of the jury's hands. Specifically, they want to suppress any statements by the defense team that points to an alternate theory that someone else committed the murders. We will be here tomorrow for those hearings as well, and we'll have updates for you throughout the day. In Delphi, Bob Siegel, 13 News.
So actually, I thought they did a really good job covering this case. And this is the same WTHR. And some of it you just heard. That's actually the video. Hold on one second. It has a lot of ads on this page, but I wanted to start in where they talk about the confession to the prison warden. So this goes into a little bit more detail. Allen's defense attorney told the judge his client was sent to one of the state's harshest prison environments following his 2022 arrest, assigned to cell 107 inside the A block on the Westville Correctional Unit. During testimony, former Westville warden, John Gallipo, acknowledged the isolation unit. It's, quote, "It's like a prison inside a prison, usually reserved for convicted criminals facing disciplinary action inside the prison or those who require very close supervision." Allen was assigned to the maximum security prison to await trial despite having no previous criminal history. The Carroll County prosecutor requested a safekeeping order to house Allen in a prison rather than the Carroll County Jail because the county sheriff said he did not have adequate staff to ensure Allen's safety. So he was on watch for ending it all. So they go into that. While stationed outside, okay, so they go into his confessions. While stationed outside Allen's cell, both inmates and guards reported that he confessed to the Delphi murders. Gallipo testified that Allen also confessed committing the murders directly to him during one of the warden's frequent visits to Allen's cell block to check on the inmates. He confessed, Gallipo told the judge, adding that he never asked Allen about the murders and never told the prison guards to speak with Allen about the charges. Another witness told the judge about other confessions. Keneva Maps, a lead investigator at the Westville prison, testified that her staff logged 2 confessions that Allen made while inside the prison and then turned those confessions over to Indiana State Police investigators who issued a subpoena for the records. Dozens of other confessions. The day's most memorable witness was longtime Indiana State Police Detective Brian Harshman, who is assigned to monitor all reports, videos, and phone calls involving Allen while the murder defendant has been in prison. Asked how many incriminating statements Allen has made behind bars, Harshman responded, 60 plus direct confessions. He said some of those confessions included specifics of the Delphi murders that only the actual murderer would know. For those in the back, one more time. He said some of those confessions included specifics of the Delphi murderers that only the actual murderer would know, as well as motivation for the crimes. The detective did not elaborate with additional detail. The prosecution seems to be playing that close to their vest as far as the motivation for this crime. Harshman also testified that the confession started in March 2023 after Allen started reading a Bible in the prison cell and began proclaiming that he had found God. He said many of the confessions came during Allen's phone calls with his wife and mother, with the early confessions resulting in initial disbelief and shock. Now, this is a pattern we see with killers, that those close to them are so embarrassed, deeply ashamed that they're either married or gave birth or are related to a killer that they go into denial. Sometimes they will go into such denial that they will advocate for their loved one's innocence all the way up to, as far as they can go. Very few accept it. I would say not, I don't know if that's true, actually. I just see more people going into denial than actually accepting it. There are some cases where people accept it and cut off. Certainly, I'm thinking of 2 murder for hire cases, the Adelsons with Robert Adelson, got a hunch, and I'm thinking of case in New Jersey. Harshman said as time went on, and Allen made additional incriminating statements to his family, they responded with, "They're messing with your minds. Stop talking about it." So his family and his wife, his mother and his wife would just refuse to accept it. During much of Harshman's testimony, Allen shook his head in disagreement while sitting alongside his attorneys. We're talking about 61 incriminating statements made over the course of 2 months, said Stacy Denier, an attorney representing the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. His statements were unsolicited. So here we get into the mental health. A prison psychologist who met regularly with Allen, this is who we're talking about, testified that she also heard Allen confess to the murders. But Dr. Monica Walla said Allen's mental health was extremely poor, critical, and deteriorating, and that he suffered from stress-induced psychosis at the time he made his confessions. She also testified there was no doubt he had serious mental illness around that time. So no one should doubt it, because she's the expert and she's going to tell us the way it is. No one should doubt that he might have been play acting. He might have, what I think happened is when he realized that his wife and his mother weren't going to support him as a guilty person, he concocted a breakdown to somehow give a reason for all these confessions. He beat his head against the wall. He was depressed and withdrawn, insomnia, threatened to end it all. They even, she noticed, so it goes from April to October 2003 when Alan was proclaiming his innocence. So she says, June, it started to improve. And by October, his mental health was A-okay, according to her, because he was proclaiming his innocence. And the prosecutors, they told the judge that IDOC failed to provide Alan mental health care during that time because prison staff and investigators prioritized his status as safekeeper inmate who had to be monitored around the clock in isolation. The prison psychologist assigned to treat Alan while he served at the Westville Correctional Facility, this is the interesting thing, testified that she had long been fascinated by the Delphi murders and that she and her boyfriend traveled together to Delphi so that they could visit the crime scene and stand on the Monon High Bridge prior to learning of Alan's arrest. Dr. Monica Wallace said she frequently listened to true crime podcasts about the Delphi murders case during her commute to the Westfield prison and has commented on social media about which of these podcasts she recommends. She also admitted that she used her IDOC-issued computer to research other people mentioned as possibly being involved in the murders, a possible violation of department policy. Walla testified that she also spoke with Alan about the positive comments she has read online from his supporters, and she has advised him. This is like she's running his innocence fraud campaign from prison. She advised him not to discuss his possible involvement in the murders with anyone other than his defense attorneys. She's telling him to shut up. And she's covering, in my opinion, she's covering for him. Don't worry, I'll tell him you're mentally ill. You were having a breakdown. You were out of your mind. You didn't know what you were saying 61 times. Is this outrageous? Asked by Rozzi if her actions presented a conflict of interest and ethical problems, Walla responded, I disagree. I'm sure you disagree. This woman is deranged. So, Dr. Karen Mitchell had a good post on X about this. Hold on one second. Here we go. All people are likely to assist all people are highly likely to have assisted narcissists, psychopaths, coercive controllers, predators that hurt others, predators working in professions such as business, teaching, medicine, journalism, are ridiculously skilled at being the hidden puppet master. So she got a lot of pushback for this because I believe this is the same one who got a lot of pushback, same doctor got a lot of pushback for this, for suggesting that there were really troubled people with behavioral issues and diagnosis of personality disorders and in psychology and psychiatry, getting others to behave in ways to help forward the predator's agenda. The predator earnestly manipulate others to do things, say things that seem innocuous or designed to compromise their target and protect them from being exposed. So she was, I mean, who's the predator here? It's like in my eye, it's like two deranged people with personality disorders. Certainly, I would call Richard Allen likely a psychopath. And she seems to be, does anybody remember Brian Koberger was also studying psychology and the criminal mind, absolutely fascinated by the criminal mind. And he found the perfect psychologist for him, willing to just try to get him out at any cost. The harm to targets may be emotional, financial, social, parental, etc. Predators are so proficient at manipulation that you will likely think you are doing a good deed when your actions are ultimately helping the predator disadvantage their target. You may consider yourself very good at reading people, but even so, likelihood is you will still be effortlessly engaged in the puppeteer plans. If someone tells you that you are good at being manipulated, give this comment serious. Someone tells you that you are being manipulated, give this comment some serious thought. So does he have her under his strings? Or are they in an I scratch your back, you scratch mine? He wants to get out. She wants to be in the inside of a really famous true crime case that she's really interested in and be a part of it and be part of the story and help and maybe, and she's listened to all these podcasts pointing at other people. But so much so that she's using the work computer. Very dangerous to have these kind of characters hanging around. Scary. She's using the prison computer to help get this, to look up this psychopath's case. It's disturbing. But there's a whole Reddit for Richard Allen is innocent. And they're wondering, will Monica Walla testify at trial? And they're wondering, so if he should have been Mirandized before his sessions with Walla. Also, okay, so it says the next was Alan Mirandized before his sessions with Walla, before his therapy sessions. Can you imagine getting Mirandized? Just before we get into it, before we talk about your childhood, you have a right to remain silent during this therapy session. Anything you can or say against you can be, whatever the whole thing goes, right before a therapy session. Great idea. Also, shouldn't Alan's counsel have been present at his therapy session? It would be like group therapy with his lawyer. And then last but not least, what about HIPAA laws, which are federal? Can the state cited, can the statute cited by McLeod in his motion overcome all these legal issues that a psychologist under code, I don't know if that's a 525.33.1-17, a psychologist licensed under this article may not disclose any information acquired from persons with whom the psychologist has dealt in a professional capacity, except under the following circumstance. Trials for homicide when the disclosure relates directly to the fact or immediate circumstance of said homicide. So the law pretty much says, like, if you tell your psychologist, she's got to say what she's heard. But she's already telling me, don't tell me anything. Save it for your lawyer. You got support on the outside. It's like we're living in bizarre world. I don't even know I don't even know what to say anymore. And of course, the state, the defense is coming up with all these, occult, it was an occult crime stuff and running with that. So what will become of this hearing will be very interesting, whether the judge lets in, I would think, lets in all of these confessions or some or none at all. But the other evidence they have against him is a bullet that was from a gun he owned. They found multiple knives too, knives were used in this crime as well. There was a .40 caliber round less than 2 feet away from Libby German's body and between the girls with extraction marks that match the extraction marks that were made from Richard Allen's gun. But we haven't heard anything. There were 15 hunting and utility knives, some foldable and some with sheaths, found that police seized. And investigators also took carpet samples and swabs from the seat belts from Allen's Ford Focus they believe he was seen near the trail that day. Allen also admitted in 2 different interviews with law enforcement that he was at the bridge the afternoon the girls were killed. He said he went out on the bridge, are you ready, guys? To watch the fish. So, I mean, they said he was doing even more bizarre things, eating his own feces and stuff my feeling is he pretended to be crazy when he realized he wasn't going to get the support from his family. And his mental health strangely went way downhill then. Thanks, Dean Walker. Appreciate it. But I'm not buying this. He went so crazy and didn't know what he was saying. I mean, isn't it weird that he didn't know what he was saying in the exact way with details that only the murderer would know? Isn't that bizarre that he's hallucinating exactly in that manner and he's not putting in false details? So that is what I have for today. Please hit the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, share this episode. I'll be back Saturday at 6 p.m. with a brand new episode. Have a great night, everybody.